Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen, here today to show you guys a delicious recipe to do with those beets that are coming in. We have a red beet gnocchi. Gnocchi is a dumpling, usually typically made with flour and potato, but today it's going to be made with this beautiful red beets. You always want to start out with roasting the beets. We're going to set those to the side. These have some delicious greens on them, to be quite honest. I've sauteed these with a little bit of garlic and salt and pepper and eaten them, so they're really delicious. But for the roasting purposes, we do not need the greens, so we're just going to cut the beets off. Not going to do anything to them right now. We're not going to peel them or anything. We're going to roast them in a 425-degree oven for about 45 minutes. This particular recipe only calls for about 1 medium beet. If you were using smaller beets, you would do something two as opposed to one. And pull it out of our foil where we've roasted it, and we can work it with our fingers. My fingers are going to get nice and pink. I should have put on gloves, but that's okay. I want to pull that skin off of the beet. You can go ahead and cut off the root end at this point. Try to get as much skin as you can, but if a little bit's on there, it's not going to hurt anything. All right, now this is going to go into the food processor, and normally I would always say to go ahead and put it in the food processor, but not whole, okay? So in this case, we're actually going to go ahead and grate the beet. And this is going to be mixed with ricotta cheese and Parmesan and an egg and some salt and pepper. Now you'll see in the recipe it tells you to actually soak the ricotta overnight. The reason for that is for the moisture content that is going to be in this. You can actually see from looking at the beet, it's going to be quite full of moisture anyway. So I do recommend that you either let the ricotta soak overnight, or at least if you don't do the ricotta, you want this dough to set overnight. We're going to come back to that in a few moments. We want to go into our food processor with the beets. I've never done it with golden beets, but I'd be willing to bet that would make a beautiful presentation as well. This is going to be quite pink, as you'll see. So we've got a cup of Parmesan cheese. We've got 1 egg. We've got 1 pound of ricotta cheese. Do a little salt and pepper. Now I am going to puree this before I add the flour. And the main reason is because if it does have a very high moisture content, then I'm going to want to add more flour than what the recipe is calling for. There's that color I was telling you about. Recipe calls for about 2/3 cup of flour. You may want a little bit more. This is going to be quite moist, I see, so I'm actually going to go ahead and probably add a cup of flour versus 2/3. I do need this to be somewhat dry for forming purposes before we cook it. All right, that is still somewhat moist. I'm even going to go ahead and add another little bit of flour. And based on my experience, this should be pretty much enough. All right. Now it needs to sit in the refrigerator for overnight, but for television purposes, we are going to show you a done dough in a few moments. So when we make our dough in the food processor, before it goes into the refrigerator overnight, I felt it important to show you guys the differences here. I've got a batch that was ready as of last night. This is what the food processor part looked like. It is a little thick, but not as thick as I really want it to be. By putting it in the refrigerator overnight, it will soak up that evaporation, that moisture, and then what should come out of that is a much thicker. Now you can see even with me digging the spoon in, it is way thicker, and that's the consistency we're looking for, and that's the importance of not skipping that step and letting it go overnight. Once it does set overnight, then you can move your gnocchi to a pastry bag. Just learned this trick recently, and I love this. This is great. I have a pot of boiling water here. Yes, there is a string, and no, it's not a tightrope walker string. You want this to be somewhat of a taut string to come across the water. You want your water to be salted, which it was, and it's boiling. And now I'm going to take this pastry bag. It takes a little bit to get a hang of it, but it's really great. We're going to squeeze out just enough for a dumpling. We're going to cut it on that string. Once you get the hang of it, it actually works quite well. Now, a traditional gnocchi is usually done, you roll the dough in flour, and you can roll it on the back of a fork to give it grooves. There are such things as gnocchi boards out there if you wish to invest in that. We're just going to cook a few just to put into a serving bowl. And these are pretty much done after they float to the top. I think that's all we really need to do right now. Now, while they are cooking, I did want to go back over another part of the recipe, and that is a sage brown butter. We turned butter on low earlier in the day and let it sort of caramelize to a certain extent. You want that on low. Do not turn it on high. After it's been on low for a couple of hours, it does do this nice brown color, and then you're going to add that fresh sage as well. That's going to come and make that somewhat crispy, and then we're going to top it when we serve the red beet gnocchi with that beautiful sage butter. So these are floating to the top. It's an interesting color, and I'm not so sure you can get your kids to eat it, but I certainly love it myself. I'm going to go ahead and dump these directly into that sage butter. Oh, I tasted this morning, and it is to die for. So there you see the sage brown butter. You see the red beet gnocchi. Toss that up in there. You want to kind of be gentle with it because they will fall apart. Put the gnocchi in the bottom of the bowl. Encourage your diners to taste that crispy sage. There's nothing like it. Maybe drizzle just a tad butter over top of that. Here we go. And if I wanted to garnish it with a little bit more Parmesan cheese. Beautiful dish. And there you have it, red beet gnocchi. Please follow the steps. They are important. I'm Tammy Brawley with The Green Kitchen. Join us next time on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the Heart of the Home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.